The first build I'll be showing y'all how to make is the balanced offensive point. You gotta make him a point guard. You gotta make him 6'8", 180 pounds with a 7'5" wingspan. Now, this build on offense can do everything. It get contacts, you can shoot from the hash, you get good ball handle animations, and since you made him 6'8" at the point guard position, he got good defense. Like the build name is balanced. The only bad thing about this build is the speed, but that's slight. Now this build, the balanced offensive guard. This build, you gotta make our shooting guard, you gotta make 6'8", 233 pounds with a 7'5" wingspan. But the thing about this build, it has a similar name to the point. This one is the guard. But the finishing got worse, the shooting stayed the same, and the playmaking stayed the same, but the defense got way worse just because you upgraded the strength. So if you're gonna go with one of the balanced names, just go with the point, don't go with this build. Now this build right here, the Scrappy wing, is the best on this list. Now, you gotta build him at small forward, you gotta build him 6'6", 206 pounds with a 7'3" wingspan. This build dunks like he got a 90 driving dunk. He shoot lights out. And since you have an 80 ball handle, you don't have the best animations, but you have animations that can get the job done. And I had a 93 rebound on this build, so you catch your rebounds over centers. And since the build is fast and you're 6'6", and most people are 6'9" or 6'1", you're gonna have an advantage over whoever you play, because you're fast and you can play defense. But I feel like this is the best on this list. Now this build is another version of the Scrappy wing, but it's called the Scrappy point. But you make it at point guard, you gotta make it 6'4", 188 pounds with a 7'1" wingspan. The only thing that this build is really good at is defense and catching boards. But since you're 6'4", you're not gonna be catching boards like that. So I wouldn't even recommend this build to y'all. I recommend that y'all make the Scrappy wing over the Scrappy point. Now this build is called the break starter. This is built at the center position. I'm not really a center player, so I don't know what's really good about this build. But it's 7 foot, 248 pounds, 7'10" wingspan. I know it's okay finishing, okay shooter. It's a great defender, a good pass. It has good pass accuracy. Pretty fast for a center. But it isn't the best at anything on the offensive end. But I heard that you can use it in like comp settings, but I wouldn't really know since I don't use centers. But I heard that it's pretty good, so you should try it out. This build is called the floor general. You gotta build it at point guard. You gotta make it 6'9", 194 pounds with a 7'7" wingspan. Now, it has okay finishing, it has okay shooting, it has great playmaking and great defense. There's not really anything wrong with this build except it's kind of slow. That's pretty much the only downside of this build. Now this build is called the inside the arc combo guard. I don't even know how you get that, but it's made at a shooting guard position, 6'6", 200 pounds with a 7'3" wingspan. Now this build is like another all-around threat. People are not gonna know how to play this build because of the name, but it's basically just another all-around threat. Now this build is called the hybrid defender. You gotta make it at point guard, 6'9", 230 pounds, and a 7'7" wingspan. This build is only really good. You can't shoot, you can't really play make, but you have a good finishing and great defense. That's pretty much all for this build because it's hybrid defender. This build is a perimeter lockdown. You gotta make it a shooting guard. You gotta make it 6'8", 193 pounds with a 7'6" wingspan. And this build is basically just a better version of the hybrid defender, just like less defense. But I think if you're gonna make, if you're choosing between those two, you gotta make a perimeter lockdown. It's a better all-around build. Now this build is called a tempo pushing point. Now you gotta build it at point guard. You gotta make it 6'4", 202 pounds with a 6'10" wingspan. Now with this build, it has okay finishing. It has great playmaking. It's pretty fast. It can jump for boards because it has a high vertical. Only bad things about this build, it has a low 3 ball and low defending. Now this build is called an all-around threat. You actually probably heard of this build before, but it's actually rare to see in park. You gotta make it as a small forward, 6'8", 194 pounds with a 7 7-foot wingspan. This build is good at finishing. It's great at finishing, great at shooting, great at playmaking, and it has good perimeter D. But all around defense, it's pretty bad. And the build is not that fast. That's the only downside of the all-around threat. Now this build is called a two-way mid-range creator. You gotta make it as small forward. You gotta make it 6'9", 241 pounds, 7'4" wingspan. This build has below okay finishing. It has okay shooting. It has okay playmaking, but it has solid defending. The cons is pretty slow. This build is like all around okay. Now this build is called a two-way stretch glass cleaner. You gotta make it at a power forward. You gotta make it 6'9". You gotta have it 218 pounds with a 7'7" wingspan. Now it's a good finisher. It's a good shooter. It has great defending and rebounding. The only cons about this build is slow. It can't dribble. It has bad playmaking. Those are really the only bad things about this build. Now this build is called a versatile offensive force. You gotta make it at a shooting guard. You gotta make it 6'8", 208 pounds with a 7'2" wingspan. It's an okay finisher. It's actually a great finisher because it has a high layup. You know how OP Acrobat is. It's a great shooter, a great playmaker. The only cons about this build is slow and it has bad defending. Now this build is called a slashing 5. You gotta make it at a center. You gotta make it 6'9", 234 pounds with a 7'7" wingspan. It's a great finisher. It has good ball handle, a good defender, but it can't shoot and it's slow.